All right, peace, peace, peace. Greetings, greetings, greetings. All right, 1 2 1 2. I'm doing a uh, simple check. Make sure all the technicals are in place. Bear with me. All right, just doing a simple check to make sure all the technicals are in place. All right, make sure the comments are up. I'm making sure the ticker is rolling. Information is there. I need me a lower thirds that looks something like that. I'm not sure. I'm in a strange environment, so y'all gotta bear with me. All right. All right. Cool, cool, cool. All right. So I think we are on. All right. Give thanks. All right. Greetings, family. This is Professor Griff, and of course, this is Arm the Masses right here on Black Power Media Reloaded. And if you're watching this, you're probably seeing this on Serious Minds RN TV or Professor Griff's channel right there on YouTube. But anyway, in any event, we got a beautiful and a dynamic show coming up. I simply call Rapping Black with my brother Amde. All right, from the Watts Prophets. We're going to bring him up shortly in 1 second. In the meantime, in between time, thanks to everyone that's been supporting the platform, been supporting the cause. All right, so just from the rip, I'm going to save the meat of this for him to tell you for himself. But everything from the intro right on out to the outro, I'm going to let him tell you because I want you to hear it in his words and his words only. But this controversy that's going on with hip hop today in reference to the origin of hip hop, the argument that's been going on, there's a dynamic and a very intricate part of this conversation that's not actually happening right now. And that's the conversation of the true origins of the aspect of the spoken word aspect of this thing, the rapping aspect of this thing. And I think Amde is able to fill that particular void and fill those blanks in. Not only that, the idea of the DJing aspect of it has not been filled in either, simply because there was a dynamic that was going on in Brooklyn that was definitely making some things happen. And you got to start questioning the fact that what was really going on in the Bronx and really what was going on in Brooklyn, Long Island, and some other places in reference to hip hop is concerned. So I did the Carl Nelson show to deal with the cultural appropriation of hip hop the other day, and he asked me a few questions, and I kind of laid some things out. Shortly after that, Amde came on, and he wanted to talk about and ask a question in reference to the difference between hip hop and rap. But after I explained it to him the best of my ability in the time frame that we had, he came back with a second question, and was basically dealing with this whole idea of the missing pages that I called them of the hip hop story. And I think, but because someone else was telling that story through a very thin, shallow, and giving a very thin, shallow narrative and description of how that took place, I think there's a large aspect of it that's been left out. All right, so we're going to dive into that in a few minutes tonight. Shout out to Quan. Shout out to everyone that supports the platform. All right. I don't want to waste any more time. I want to kind of dive right into this because I'm not sure how long this conversation is gonna take. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, my brother, slightly older than me. No, not slightly. Got about 20 stacks on me. You understand what I'm saying? This is the father, Amde, all the way from the Watts Prophets. Now, if y'all don't know anything about the Watts Prophets, I'm going to let him tell you. So, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, family, and I see some enemies out there already. Don't worry about that. We got that, Amde. Anyway, our brother, the father, Amde from the Watts Prophets. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
Greetings, good brother. How you feel?
Excellent, man. I've been in the hospital for a little while, but I've been out about 5 days, so now I'm feeling a lot stronger. I just had to have a little procedure done, but I'm cool. You know, I'm 85 years old and 85 and 9 months in February.
Okay.
So, first of all, I want to preface this with saying and why I say this saying. Rap had a baby called hip hop, not hip hop had a baby called rap. Now, where I got that saying from was a man named Little Richard.
Mhm.
And Little Richard was one of the fathers of R&B. And he had to go around America screaming at the top of his voice for a long time that R&B had a baby called rock and roll, not rock and roll had a baby called that. So anyway, and then I watched it change to rock and roll, and they took all the money and they
Mhm.
controlled everything that it was in contact with that art form.
Right.
The Africans that started it had nothing to do with it anymore. So I just wanted to say that. That's why I say that. I'm just bringing it to the next generation.
Okay. So the conversation you and I had the other day, kind of started off a little bit shaky, but you and I had a personal conversation after the Carl Nelson show, and we kind of talked about some things. Can you reiterate some of the things that you were going over in reference to this whole idea of when you got together with the rest of the brothers in the group, and then what period of time was that you guys were putting the Watts Prophets together? So people
The
could
Watts
know who.
Prophets started in 1967 out of Bud Schuberger's Watts Writers Workshop. We
Mm,
had rioted and started the riots across America.
right,
And from that, as I said, a Jewish man by the name of Bud Schuberg came into Watts and he started a workshop called the Watts Writers Workshop.
right,
Out of that workshop began to come schools of writers. Like there's one, he's in the hospital tonight. His name is Ojinki. That was a school of writers, the preaching type. But anyway, what happened to all of us is the FBI came and burned our workshop to the ground.
wow,
And but out of that workshop came a group called the Watts Prophets, and we were the first ones to take rap into clubs. And that's what I want to kind of stay on this word rap. First of all, as I went across the country, I found out that people didn't really know the definition of it. Different people were making up definitions.
right,
Rap to us, I learned the word rap at about 8 years old. As I
mhm,
say, I'm 85 now. And I've been using it as from a little boy. We
right,
lived,
right,
we came, my family came from Louisiana. I happened to be born in Texas, and then we
right.
came to California. And
Okay,
so my uncle was a pool shark, and we lived right in the black area or the black belt in Los Angeles, which was very defined.
right.
And in that black belt, you heard the word rap constantly. And it was a colloquial word. It meant nothing but to talk. But that person really could talk. He sort of
Okay,
had a gift for gab. He wasn't just one who, you know what I mean. We would use the word, easily. I'm gonna
right,
go rap to my sister. Let me
right,
rap
right,
to you. We used the word like that. It was just common amongst us.
right,
So
right,
after the '60s and after the riots and at this Watts Writers Workshop, after the FBI burned it down, the Watts Prophets continued because we thought when we started the Watts Prophets that we could tell the truth and make a few dollars and
right,
survive. That's what we were trying to do in the '60s because brothers was rapping and taking the covers off of everything. We were the voice of the '60s in the western part of the United States.
right,
So that word rap came all the way from Louisiana, Texas, on down in Phoenix and on into Los Angeles. And it started actually now. Rap is an ever evolving art form. Wherever there was jazz, there was always rap. And let's
right,
see, I'm going to tell you how that started. When we came here as slaves, they were able to hang our bodies, but not our spirits. and not some of our tradition, culture, and history that was ingrained in us. And so, as we came here, if you came from Ghana, they had 40 something languages. I don't know just how many.
Right.
But
Right.
if other parts of Africa, they had the Bantu based languages, and there was over 400 of them. And then there was really all types of languages, other languages coming from other parts of Africa.
Right.
So, so when we got here, we was real confused. We couldn't talk to each other. We had to learn the language of the slave master. So being the brilliant people that we are, we began to put together a new language because basically they were Bantu based languages. So they had common denominator words like okra, maybe. It may go through all the languages.
Mm.
So anyway, we begin to form this new language, the grassroots, not those in the house. The
Right.
grassroots, the ones in the fields, begin this new language. And they knew this language had to have deceit from the very beginning because we didn't want the white man to know what we were talking about.
Right.
So,
Okay.
so that's why in rap you hear things like, that's bad, and we mean good.
Right.
It had deceit in it from the very beginning, just like many of the things we begin to do. But this language began to evolve amongst the grassroots people until it didn't reach the academic eye until a poet by the name of Paul Laurence Dunbar came along.
Right.
And they started calling it a dialect. But the linguists knew that was an ever evolving language. And
Right.
it went on and it went back, we was making fun at them, and all kinds of stuff. But this language went everywhere. The preacher used it. The gospel singers used it.
Right.
The clowns used it. The comedians, etc. It went everywhere
Mm-hmm.
because rap meant to scat it, hum it, chat it, or sing it. However you could use the voice, that's what it really meant.
Right.
And that rapping in rhythm, and that was a part of everything that we did. Our gospel, as I said, our comedians, the Watts Prophets, Leroy and Skillet, that these kind of cats, we just watched them. We weren't comedians, but we happened to be on our first label with them. And so we saw
And
all of this.
what was the label? Do you remember the label?
Yes, of course. It was called Laugh Records. It's what
Okay.
the record company that made Richard Pryor and oh, I can't think of the other
Okay.
brother's name. But anyway, as it didn't as it when Paul Laurence Dunbar brought it to the academic community. The linguists, as I said, knew that was a new language, an ever evolving language. What I mean by ever evolving is my generation call it a pad, the next one call it a crib, the next one call it
Right.
a spot, and I don't know
Right.
what the kids you call it now. I can't hardly even understand some of how advanced and how beautiful some of the language is in the real rap community. But it continued on, and cats like Cab Calloway, uh, and one of the great brothers who pushed it a long time was Oscar Brown Jr. And
Right.
yeah, he was the big papa. He showed us all how to play with it, but they wouldn't make him because you see, he gave you an education and you didn't know he was giving you one. When he
Right.
did the signified monkey was our symbol of what a poem was. My generation. We didn't know nothing about no Shakespeare, Langston Hughes, and all nothing like. We didn't know none of that.
Right.
We only knew what we was hearing, our grandma's voices, the people around us. So it began to, as I said, cats like that begin to push it. Cav Calloway, Pigmeat Martin, everybody used the voice to just in rhythm. without it had nothing to do with music. It was the ever evolving language of rap. And it's laid around and you know for years until two two groups brought it back to life. One group was conscious of it, the Watts Prophets, but
Right.
the last poets were not. They were just rapping. And I asked Abiodun a couple of years ago, would they have liked to have been called rappers at that time? And they said, of course not, because nobody wanted to recognize this ever evolving language other than
Right.
cats like the Watts Prophets and cats like, you know, that were really scientific. And I was raised around Don Cherry, the father, one of the fathers of world music, Arnett Coleman, Billy Higgins. All of these were Watts boys. Charlie Mingus lived there. In 1958, Langston Hughes and him made a jazz kind of rapping album because these cats from the college, you know, they was kind of dealing with it. But who was constantly dealing with it were jazz musicians. That's where this hip language came from. And
Right.
it was nourished. At one time, J. Edgar Hoover had jazz musicians uh, uh,
Target.
why? Because he said they were speaking another language,
Right.
and they really were. And then it came out, you know, and the Dr. Williams and them, and it was finally made a language called Ebonics, but it was always called rapper to us.
Right.
And it continued to evolve. And then it came about, as I said, two groups came about doing it just naturally. And that was the Watts Prophets and the Last Poets.
Okay.
And
Hold on. Can you pause 1 second? Let me just let the people know that's coming in, who you are and what we're talking about. This is Father Amde from the Watts Prophets. Watts, we're talking about California. We're talking about LA. They call themselves the Watts Prophets because they was those early poets that actually was rapping. And this is the history that he's going over right here on Arm the Masses, brought to you by Black Power Media, Reloaded, and Serious Minds. Of course, y'all know this is Professor Griff, Public Enemy, Serious Minds, Enemy Minds. All right. So, but continue, good brother. Where you at? I don't want to disturb you. Go ahead.
well, the Watts Prophets wasn't just poets. We are griots. We
Okay.
keep the tradition, culture, and history of our community.
Right.
That's what every group of rappers does. If
Right.
you live in New York, your rap is about New York. If you live in Chicago and it's in Chicago, your rap is about Chicago and Chicago rhythm with Chicago topics. It move and with Chicago words. If you live in Louisiana, they got their own flavor. If you live in Texas, they got their own flavor. It's a ever evolving language that comes from the elements that is it's around. It's like the blues. You have to have had it a little bit
Right.
to deal with it. So that's how it continued to come about. And then in the 60s, when we came out, we were attacked by the black bourgeoisie, actually, who, as an example, when Baraka came to Los Angeles.
Miri Baraka.
Yes, 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 he brought the black arts movement.
Right.
But we didn't need a black arts movement. We already had one. This was the home of Dexter Gordon. This was
Right.
the home of Charlie Mingus. This was the home of Don Cherry, Jane Cortez. How much blacker do you want it?
Right. Right. Right.
So, and coming from more musicians were in California than there was in New York. But as people always keep our history under control, they didn't tell you that story. But Bird wrote Rockin' in Camarilla. He went to Crazy House there. Billie Holiday went to jail. So I'm just telling you, there was more jazz musicians coming to California because that's what's Hollywood. And good jazz, good musician could work, studio work constantly every day. And so they were coming from all over the world to come to Los Angeles, and jazz was up and down Central Avenue, and The community was like when you lived in this type of community, man, it was swinging community. Everywhere you went, you heard wisdom and poetry. You might walk in a cafe and a cat say, you say, how you doing, bud? He say, could be better, could be worse. Better be riding an ambulance in a hearse. You heard poetry everywhere.
So
You heard
where did this term hip come from then?
the
Where,
term hip was I can't tell you the actual origins of the word hip nor the word rap. It was rolling when I got here. So
mm,
anyway, when I came on the scene, it was already rolling. But like hip, we put hip on everything that was hip. And when my people came here from Louisiana and Texas, they were
right,
doing a thing called a Texas hop. We did the bunny hop. We did the Lindy hop. And every dance that we went to at that time for the younger people, it was called a hop.
right, exactly. Yeah.
Anytime, me and many a days, as I said, we would put hip on anything that was hip, we thought was hip. And in many days, me and my lady, a wife of 58 years and one of my mentors, we walked out of a hop and said, baby, that sure was a hip hop. So, you know, that all that ain't nothing new. We've been doing that. You just don't know about it.
Right.
But you're lucky at tonight to get a real griot story, hit the slices of his life, and working with giants like Quincy Jones. The first thing he said to us when he met us, keep talking, brother, so I can hear what key you're talking in. You know,
Mm,
we deal with cats, giant musicians like Don Cherry that taught us things like uh, a style was the death of creativity. We
right.
were dealing with giants, so we knew what a great artist was and how to approach this thing of rap. And we did, and we were out there 48 years as a group, and we worked everywhere. But black people knew little about us. The ones that did were working against us. You would be
Oh,
surprised at those blacks that look
okay.
so black, but they wasn't to the Watts Prophet.
Right. Now, who are the
The
other
first
brothers?
cat,
Who are the other people in the Watts Prophet?
Otis O'Solomon and Richard Dido. And we
Okay.
both come from Louisiana roots, me and Richard, and he came from Alabama. But he
Okay.
never lived in Watts a day in his life. He just became a part of the Watts Prophets. And he
Okay.
was a great poet, and he really helped push what Richard and I, who were coming from Louisiana Creole tradition, and he helped for us to do what we were trying to do. So
Okay.
go ahead. You can ask
Yeah.
some questions.
Yeah. I
I
will.
can roll. I got 85 years worth of slices.
I just wanted to ask you. So it was just you and the brother coming out of Louisiana, then the other brother joined you. How many albums did y'all record?
I recorded one called Black Voices on the Streets of Watts. And
Right.
then the first album called Rap was called Rapping Black in a White World by the Watts Prophets. At that time, we had brought a good lady into the group by the name of Dee Dee McNeil, who was a songwriter for Motown. And she had a song called Black in a White World. And us being rappers and pushing rapping, we called our album Black and a White, Rapping Black in a White World. That's the first where anyone saw it and ever was written on anything like that as an album.
Right.
And that's where the record company got the genre of rap. And, you know, we had to do a lot of things to survive. At first, they didn't want to pay us for poetry. They said, that's not a song. We said, that's all the elements of a song. But
Right.
I came from a fighting family, and my son and my wife, we always caucused and fought everything.
Right.
And I happened to own everything I had today. I ain't got no money, but I own all of my stuff.
Okay.
So, you know, go ahead.
So when I heard you on the Carl Nelson show, when I was on there the other day, and then we had a personal conversation after that. Yeah, I heard what you were saying, and I was just saying to myself, wow, way back then the artists were going through what the artists are going through now. Do you
The
understand what I'm saying?
exact same thing. The
Okay,
exact
so
same thing.
yeah, so can you kind of give us that insight on what you the meeting that you went to, that you said you had a meeting with some people about rap and the history of rap and that kind of thing? Who was this
Well,
meeting
it was
with?
in the early years of rap. A famous rapper took me to a meeting. I don't want to talk him because I don't want to call any names
You don't
because
have to
I'm
call
not
me
here
that.
to take licks at nobody.
Right,
We all made mistakes and didn't even know what we was doing. He took me to a meeting, and when I walked in this was the early days of rap as we were getting booked and stuff. And so in this meeting, I saw all these white men, and I walked in, and I think it was another brother and me and this famous rapper. And looked around. I'm wondering, where am I?
right,
I'm in this sea of white men. And they started talking about this new thing called hip hop, where you better get involved in it because it's like kind of directly and getting involved and investing in the prison industrial complex. Now, me, I'm explosive. And I jumped up and walked out. They had introduced me as one of the fathers of rap. But as I began to see that this was the music industry sitting around me, as I began to listen to their conversations and their talk, etc., I blew up and walked out, which I
mm,
probably should have stayed and heard more. But I left. And then, who actually really gave the Watts prophets more problems than anything and anyone were black people,
well, why do
black
you think why do you think
intellectuals.
that is? Why do you think that is?
You would be surprised because black intellectuals I came from the grassroots.
Right,
So and you would be shocked at the people who took a lick at us.
right.
One of
So
the
what,
first ones to give a vicious blow to the Watts prophets was Jim Brown.
well,
And he came to our,
I'm not surprised at that, but go on.
oh, I'm glad most people seem to be.
Nah, I'm not surprised.
He came to our community, started this thing called American. We had been working with gangs years before he even arrived. But he came and took over, and the black sororities and fraternities swarmed like gangbangers in the Watts. And when we looked up, they had control of most of the middle management jobs. They were dictating what was and what wasn't. They were redesigning our community. It was a mobs of social engineering going on. And here in Los Angeles now, I don't get invited to anything.
Mm,
They can have a history on the poetry in Los Angeles and never invite me. And I'm sitting right down the street from them.
right,
The FBI and the CIA and the black intellectual really removed our names really very, very carefully. And our history. I've been fighting to save a building in Watts for over 40 years, and we finally saved it a couple of years ago.
right,
And that no one knew our history. The city, all of it. The Charlie Mingus living there, the Don Sherry living there, the James Cortez living there, the Dexter Garden running through there. The go, I can go on and on. None of them knew our history. Had
right.
I not been living, no one would have known the history of this wonderful building called the Mafundi Institute that was built by the black grassroots artists out of
Right.
Watts after the 60s. But
Right.
our history seems to be not clear everywhere now. So
Right.
I'm trying to hopefully get that building turned into a museum telling the black history of Watts and how
Right.
we inspired much of this. They took the eyes off of Watts and put it on Compton. And I understand because most of the people who lived in Compton came from Watts anyway. You know,
Okay.
like Compton was like moving on up,
Right. 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 I
you
got you.
know.
Yeah. So just to speak in behalf of those of us, unbeknownst to you, there was a group called Public Enemy that did take the poets that came before us, knowing and understanding the history of hip hop and rap. We understood where it was coming from. We understood that there was a whole generation prior to us um, doing what later became hip hop. And like I told you in the personal conversation that you and I have had, that we stood on you guys' shoulders. And you could, like I told you, you could go back and listen to Professor Griff lectures. I always mentioned you guys. I didn't really know the depths of what you're telling me tonight, but I had your two albums. I didn't know who you guys were. I didn't even know if you guys were still living. I understood what black music went through and black people went through, what our culture went through, but we stood on the shoulders of you guys. You understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
when you heard me on the Carl Nelson show, I think I took offense to something you were saying because you said you was talking to some guys and we purposely leave out Watts prophets and other people inside of the history. Well, I never did. And I was just saying that to you. Not that I was so much offended. I was just saying, well, maybe Amde don't know who I am. Maybe Amde just don't know my work. You understand what I'm saying? Not even meeting you ever in life. I always mention the Watch Prophets. And I'm not just saying that because we're on here tonight. You can go back and listen to any of my lectures. I did a lecture called Beyond Beats and Rhymes, and I go over the history. I did the psychological covert war on hip hop, talking about some of them same meetings that you went to. I did a slew of interviews. I wrote 2 books. You understand what I'm saying? Even
yeah,
a friend of mine that I do business with, that I travel with, he's wrote a book, and I sent you some of the information that was inside of his book. Did you get it today?
yes, I got.
Okay, that's in his book. So we never forgot about you, and I don't want you to feel a certain kind of way because you think we forgot. I would never forget you. I'll never forget the Watch Prophets, Last Poets, Gil Scott Heron, and all those MCs and griots that came before us. And now it's rare that you find artists like Public Enemy that did stand on your shoulders and will admit it. There's not too many, although they've probably sampled some of you guys. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I just wanted to say that because I really think you need to know that coming from a
I've
young
been sampled. I've been sampled most every year for maybe about 40 years
right,
by somebody.
right. And they didn't pay you guys and nor gave y'all the credit.
No, they didn't. We'd always have to catch them. But luckily, as I said, came from a warrior family, my wife and my son, and we would always conquer and fight back. As I said, when they said they were going, when they first started, they said they weren't going to pay for no poetry. And we
Right,
say, oh, yes, you are going to pay for poetry.
right,
And so I started, my kids kept telling me, Papa, we hearing you on the radio. You hearing your voice. And then when nobody knew what sampling was really then.
right,
So
exactly.
so they kept telling me, Papa, we keep hearing your voice on the radio. So one day they got me on the radio and I heard my voice. So I
Right,
said they can't do that. My wife said they can't do that. Me and my little son, we caucus. And I start calling lawyers straight down Wilshire Boulevard
right,
till I got to one near UCLA. I can't remember his name now. And I would tell them, I'd say, listen, I'm hearing my voice on the radio. And, they would say, well, what do you want us to do about it? What is that? So nobody understood. Finally, I got to this one lawyer, and he said he was a property lawyer. What is it? The
Intellectual
I,
property.
intellectual property lawyer.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I got to him, and he asked me. He said they can't use your voice without your permission.
Right.
He said, "Would you call me back in an hour? I want to talk to my firm about this." And so they called me back in about an hour and asked me more questions about what I was hearing and this and that. And to make a long story short, we ended up on the front page of the San Francisco Law Journal, where they had to pay us. They had to begin to pay us, but they had different little arguments. But that's why rappers get paid. At first, they wanted to just take our rapping,
Right.
our ever evolving language, and do
Right.
what and they have taken it and are doing what you see that ever evolving language had to be changed after the 60s. They
Exactly.
couldn't continue to hear Keo Whitey. They couldn't continue to hear the conversation that we were bringing to the
Right.
front. And they had to change it. And they took it and corrupted it as best they could.
Right.
But
And even
today, today these young rappers, they trying real hard to get out of this rut. But the old cats are holding up the new thought with all of this, same old thing.
right.
So go ahead, bro.
I was going to say, and I think the contracts, even the written language in the contracts, have changed because we have to keep in mind there were some early white poets that they didn't say those same things to. They actually paid them and put their records out. There was speeches that Barry Gordy and other people put on labels that was selling, and they paid those speakers. There were comedians that made records. So for the whole idea of them not paying a poet, when you could pay comedians and you could pay lecturers and speakers and other people to be on wax, you understand what I'm saying?
Well, that's
Why?
how, that's how, that's Laugh Records. When they signed the Watts Prophets, they signed me first to do this record with some poets that were supposed to be from Watts, but they weren't. And I happened to got on it and became the feature poet. It was called Rapping Black, I mean, Black Voices on the Streets of Watts.
Black voices, right?
And yes, and it's one of the epic albums in the world. But then when the Watts Prophets came along, we we then did our album, Rapping Black in a White World, and that's how I began to roll. And it rolled on down to Easy and them. I love
Yeah,
Little Easy. He was quite an entrepreneur, and he just was doing what he thought was right. And he wanted to sign the Watts Prophets, but we ended up getting signed to Laugh Records, and we then told Laugh Records, which had Richard Pryor, this was a prize, that we weren't comedians, and we didn't want to be on no Laugh Records, and so they started a subsidiary called Allah for the Watts Prophets and those type of records after a while.
right. And
But
that
we
was a
went
common
through a
thing.
lot. But would you guys believe that I have never met any of the great rappers on the West Coast except two or three of them?
That was my next question. Why didn't the West Coast rappers step up to the plate, recognize that you're one of the fathers of rap, to put you on, support you, sign you, or do whatever? Why do you think that is?
They have never came to us for anything. One of the Watts prophets died. The first one to die, Richard, his dream was always that maybe we would get invited to one black college out of all the black colleges.
Wow.
And we've never been invited to one. And when a professor tried to invite us to one, they locked her classroom. The janitor
Wow.
wouldn't open the door.
Right.
So, but we could be found at the finest high schools. across America, teaching people what we were doing, watching and developing our art form.
Right,
We
right,
were the
right.
first ones to bring poetry into clubs. Could you
Mm,
imagine walking into a club with some paper and a pencils and people is drinking and dancing and you standing there doing poetry? We broke those doors down and we took it from the podium to the stage.
right, right,
And
right.
we never had a bad gig, man. Uh,
Okay,
no matter what we were doing, the Watts Prophets never had a bad gig.
right. So you mentioned Dee Dee McNeil, right?
Yes,
Now, didn't Dee Dee come out of the writing kind of circles from Motown?
that's what I said. She was on
Okay,
contract writer for Motown.
okay. So why? So if they were putting if Richard Pryor was on this label, so if they was putting out Richard Pryor stuff, which was talking and telling jokes, why wouldn't they put out the Watts Prophets unless you guys just didn't want to be on Laugh?
We didn't want to be on Laugh.
Oh, okay, I got you.
That's why Laugh made a subsidiary called Allah.
Right, I got you. I got that.
We
Okay, I
let
got
them know we weren't comedians. That's what we let them know. We're
you.
not comedians. We are poets, griots. And that's what we would like to be recognized as.
Right, right, right. So from what I'm hearing, you still own the masters, right? You
I
still
own
own the recording.
everything that I've ever done, all of my books and what little few albums, 3 or 4 albums I've done. I own all of that, all of the Watts Prophets
Right.
work.
Now,
We,
would you
we,
be?
we
No, I was about to
what?
say, would you be opposed to putting some of those lyrics with what you already have to music? So the generation now coming up behind me can understand and know who the Watts Prophets are.
I used to do something like that. I've been trying to work with the youth, man. I'm not interested in working with old folks at all. I'm interested in
Well, I
working
guess
with
that might
young
count
people.
me out, but I got you. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, you are young. You're a young man
Oh,
still.
I hear you. Right.
They say, young and old go together like the seasons of the weather. While old folks have knowledge you mustn't miss, and without them, you wouldn't even exist.
Right.
But
So I
I
think,
would love to do something like that, man.
and then not only that, you need to tell this story and get this on film. You understand what I'm saying? So young people can see and hear you, because this is one of the key pieces that I think the Busta Rhymes of the world and the Fat Joes of the world and even the KRS Ones of the world, they don't understand that a lot of these things were already going on prior to the Bronx getting a hold of this thing called rap. And I think we need to understand that particular dynamic. I tell people, stop talking about the mixer was invented and created up in the Bronx and they had to do. No, they was already using the mixer in Brooklyn. They were already DJing in Brooklyn. There was a whole bunch of Brooklyn crews. They was already doing a degree. Now you heard of Hank Span, right?
And yes, and Sun Ra. Sun
And some
Ra was
right.
always working with electronics, man.
Exactly. So they were already doing these things. So by the time it hit the Bronx, I don't see how these guys missed this part of history.
Yes, because someone else always writes our history. That's why I'm a griot trying to tell ours, man.
Exactly.
Someone else always tells our story.
Right. So I think it's imperative that we get this aspect on film so we can start piecing together and put the puzzles back in place. So when we send this kind of information and these kind of interviews to the rest of these cats that's young, they don't understand that the same dog that bit you in your time, the Watts Prophets, also bit Public Enemy, bit Poor Righteous Teachers, bit all of the conscious artists, Brand Nubian and a few other conscious artists that came in. The same dog that bit you bit us. You understand what I'm
Same
saying?
one. Same one.
Right. And the
And we
same
gotta
madness.
start telling our own history, documenting our own history, man.
Right.
You know, and you guys say you would like to hear me do. I'm 85. You gotta hurry.
But we're
You
gonna
know
try
what I
to make
mean?
that
I can't
happen.
keep waiting.
I'm gonna try to make that happen as soon as possible. What I'm going to do, starting tomorrow, is go find you guys records, the Black Voices, the Rapping Black, You understand what I'm saying? Um,
They
I'm
all on there. My new one, Ebony Creole Voices, etc.
right. Um, we can find out what key the song is. With that really don't matter right now, but we can figure out the tempo. There's technology now that can put music to all of those poems that you guys laid out and give you the rightful credit that you deserve. You understand what I'm saying? I
Well,
don't want
that was always our desire, is that our poetry lived in the library of people's minds, and that's
exactly.
what that would help us do.
And I think people need to understand you guys are walking libraries. You understand what I'm saying? What you gifted us with tonight is a monumental piece of that particular puzzle, so we as young people can understand. Like, damn, that's what that brother went through. Now we understand why we have the Fat Joes and the rest of these characters talking real grimy the way they talking. You understand what I'm saying? Um,
Yes,
that what you're giving us, the part of history that you're giving us, happened way on the West Coast. But we had to watch prophets and other poets on the East Coast, not to mention all the ones in Middle America.
that's right. All over the South, everywhere
Right,
they were rapping. It's an ever evolving language, and it's
exactly.
got the flavor of the soil that it comes from. If it's in New York, it's got that New York style. You understand?
Right,
It's a wonderful, ever evolving art form. And as I said, everywhere there was jazz, there
right,
was them cats rapping.
right, exactly. So yeah, I have black and white footage from the 20s, from the 30s
Yeah,
of cats rapping way
yeah,
before, way before there was anybody coming out of Puerto Rican history or anybody else's history. Black people
that's
were
right.
rapping. Black people
The
were
African
rapping.
Americans, they were rapping, man. It was
Exactly.
just a part of us.
Right. It's written and coded in our DNA. And I think that's what
Look,
some of these people need to understand.
look, the last poets, as far as you can go east, the wise prophets, as far as you can go west. We didn't
Right.
know each other, man, and we was rapping.
Right.
Was doing
It's
it
just
on the East Coast in their style, they New York hip thing, and we was doing it on the West Coast in our
right.
style and our hip thing.
Right. So
And
I
you
think
know,
right.
but what made us have the most problems, as I told you before, our poetry criticized African Americans. We wasn't just on, you know, attacking whitey. We was attacking black folks also, you know, because we saw what was happening. We were truly the grassroots, and the grassroots lost in Los Angeles and are homeless straight across California.
Right.
But, you know, we still here, and I'm here speaking for them laying on the sidewalk tonight.
Right. So you said you're 85 years young, so we have to make sure we get back in touch with you and set this thing in motion to say, here you go, elder. Here you go. You understand what I'm saying? This is what we'll, I don't care what we have to do to put some chump change together to get some of these songs done in the way that you like them. So you could use the Watts Prophets material to reach that generation that's coming up behind me. At least 6, 7 generations behind Professor Griff. I think that's what we should kind of strive for. You understand what I'm saying? That's the least we can do for you, bro.
Well, I would appreciate it.
Right. And some of them cats that got expendable per diems, the Snoops and the Dre's and the rest of these cats on the West Coast need to recognize the fact that you was the father of rap on the West Coast. We're gonna get in touch with them and send them this interview and let them know, look, bro, we got a walking library in our midst. Let's show this brother some the respect he deserved and give him the honor that he deserved. All right. What are some of the songs that you penned, the poems that you penned on some of the albums? Name some of them.
Well, I can do 2 or 3 of them and show you why black people did attack us.
Oh, you there? I'm okay.
Yeah, like take this poem. My fellow poems tell me not to write poems talking about black folks. But you see, I ain't mad at Whitey. I'm mad at you, you low down niggas crossing out each other, constantly talking about brother this and Whitey that. You
Mm,
low down lames, it takes two to play a game. Y'all claim to be so hip and all that jive. white world lovers talking about you's a black brother, pig feet eating niggas who explain the advantage of integration and talk about how hip birth control is.
Mm.
They're so hip. They can quote Fanon, Mao, Malcolm, Martin, Leroy, and Elders. Playing tough, but the niggas ain't really rough. Cream puffs is a better word than tough. Y'all better get hip and come off this trip with y'all overkilling asses. And I'll stop calling you niggas, nigga, when you start acting like black men. You
Ooh.
think the black bourgeoisie dug that at one of its white events?
Now, Boule ain't going for that, bro.
I could tell you, those were the kind of poor, but at the same time, like the poem I did at Bob Marley's funeral,
Uh-huh.
that poem came out because I had been invited to my first major white university,
Mhm.
UCLA. And when I looked at my poetry, I had no poetry addressing white people. So I sit down and I pen this poem, which caused an uproar many places. It always changed things. Uh, it said, wisdom. I went to the International Student Center at UCLA. There was about 100 people there. And they asked me to do a poem. And so I did the poem Wisdom and Knowledge,
Mhm.
left college. Wisdom with ease,
Wow.
somewhere to a feast. Knowledge went north, south, east, and west in conquest. Technology became life's test. Wisdom hid because of what knowledge did.
Wow.
Hid away till judgment day. Knowledge moved on as far as the moon, cracked the earth and took its worth. Stole man from life,
Mm.
messed up air, poison everywhere. Creative knowledge without wisdom flourished, and bigger bombs were made and
Mm.
dropped on have-nots. Birth control became a goal. Knowledgeable monsters gained control. Souls were stole for mere gold. Technique was in the minds of mankind, floating in wine, sailing through life in a therapeutic way, learning new technical tricks. Life slowly sliding away. Books, not feeling was man's thing. Man checked the book on how to cook, took his life to a psych, into a book he would look to label your brain schizoid, paranoid, or some other technical jive that make you look at you and not he. Remember, my brothers and sisters, what I say to you. For life have showed me all this pain, labeled an evil thing. But raise your black heads high, because knowledge without wisdom will die.
Mm. Wow.
Now,
All
let me
right.
bring you to how I kept up at 85.
Yeah, that's what I want to know because I wrote some
Well,
shit yesterday. I
let
can't
me take,
remember.
let me show you where my mind is on that.
All right.
I hear people say each and every day that the internet will set modern man free like a dolphin in the sea. That statement completely confused me. Since when, my friend, has a net set anything free? Now,
Woo.
my simpleness I regret.
Woo.
Where's the freedom in a net? Fishermen make nets, spiders weave webs, both are traps. The spider knows all in his web. He keeps it in sight day and night, wrapped real, real tight with a click and a bite. Is it
Mm.
online or inline? Download, unload. Where's the freedom in a net? Still traps in your laps, net zero, hero, SkyTel, Intel, DSL, email, tell. Processing your personal soul for info, no telling where it go. Only the net maker really know.
Woo.
Now, you used to be able to shred it, but now that's jive. The hard drive is always alive. Wrap real tight with a click and a bite. Spider-Man can pull you up tonight. Free man freely entering a net will one day experience regret because there's no freedom in a net. Fishermen control their nets. Spiders control their webs. Who, my friend, controls the World Wide Web you're in? What spider has you in its website? Wrap real tight with a click and a
We really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. So listen, I'm going to keep my word because my word is bond and bond is life. I'm going to stay in touch with you. As soon as I get off the road, I'm going to go in the studio and put some things together to send you a sample of what I'm talking about. At the same time, I'm going to contact some people to see who want to put up some of the funds so we can get this thing done and get it out. And hopefully the people will support it. All right. Matter of fact, I know they will. All right. We got to keep a treasure like you alive. You understand what I'm saying? And we got to keep what the gift that you've given us as far as the spoken word is concerned. We got to keep that alive and pass that 7 generations forward. All right.
well,
you have any last words for the people?
love.
Okay. I got one question. You still on the West Coast, right?
Yes, I still stay in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay, cool. You're not being affected by the wildfires or anything, are you?
No, but they're not far from me, 10 miles, 20 miles. They're all around us.
Oh, wow. Okay, but everybody's safe and everybody's cool, right?
Everybody is safe. I haven't been outside since they have been burning. I just gotten out of the hospital, so I'm recuperating.
Oh, okay. Give thanks. All right, good brother. We love you to life, and I'm staying in touch with you. You have my number. I have yours. I promise to stay in touch with you, and we're gonna make this happen. Okay.
Okay, let me leave you this poem. Now is new. Now
Okay.
is new. Right this moment, you can do something old or you can do something new. But now is new. The past is history. The future a mystery. Now is new. Right this moment, you can do something old or you can do something new. But a stagnated mind, I say a stagnated mind, I say a stagnated mind, it don't stagnate time. Time just moves on to now is new. Now is new. Right this moment, bro. Let's do something new.
We really appreciate you, man.
All right. Appreciate y'all too.
All right. Give thanks. Peace, good bro.
Love you.
Love you too. Peace. All right. That was Amde from a group called the Watts Prophets. Right now, you should be looking up on wherever you are. Google it. Whatever. Go to YouTube. Look up the Watts Prophets. This is Amde, the last remaining member of the Watts Prophets. They were doing it on the West Coast while the last poets were doing it on the East Coast. And there's other poets that was on the scene at that particular time. So family, I love y'all to life. This is Professor Griff. I got to get ready to get out of here. Thanks to Kalaji, Chabachenga, Black Power Media Reloaded. Thanks to all my Serious Minds RNTV family that always support the cause. We're going to figure out a method in order to get this stuff recorded, family. You understand what I'm saying? We're going to lay it in the lap of Brother Amde, all right, for him to do whatever he wants to with it. However we can get it out for the young people to hear, we need to get this thing recorded and get it out. All right? All right, family, it's Professor Griff. Inshallah, I'll see y'all sometime over the weekend. All right, my class is on Sunday, the preparedness class. Get in the preparedness class now. All right, I'm putting my phone number, 678-557-2919. If you want to get in the preparedness class at 7 o'clock Sunday evening, all right, hit your brother, Professor Griff, up, text me, and I'll send you the information about the class. Anyway, this is Professor Griff. I love y'all to life. All right, revolution is not an event. It's a process. All right. Only thing I say to y'all is become